Hi, welcome to today's Virtualization Roundtable. I'm Michael Odie, Technical Director for Windows IT Pro Magazine and SQL Server Magazine. With us today at this roundtable are Jeff Woolsey, Principal Group Program Manager for Windows Virtualization in the Windows Server and Cloud Division. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you.
And Noel Johanna. Noel is a Principal Analyst at Forrester Research. Welcome, Noel.
Thank you.
And Scott Birkland. Scott is a systems developer at Avanade. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And Rob Reinauer. Rob is product unit manager for Microsoft SQL Server. Welcome, Rob.
Thanks a lot. Glad to be here.
Let's kick this roundtable off with a question to Noel. There's been a lot of talk about virtualization these days. Can you tell us what it means to virtualize? What does it mean to an organization when they adopt a server virtualization, desktop virtualization, and application virtualization? What are some of the differences between those, and how can they help an organization?
Well, that's a very interesting question. We get a lot of inquiries at Forrester about virtualization. And over the last year and a half, the different types of questions have been coming in, asking us about what's virtualization, what's the level of virtualization. It's basically an abstraction layer of resources. Basically, it's grouping of resources together at a different stack level. You can virtualize the entire stack if you wanted to. You can virtualize one piece of the stack. Could be server virtualization, could be storage virtualization, could be application virtualization, could be even desktop virtualization, could be database virtualization, could be at different layers of virtualization. And you can reap the benefits of virtualization at any of those layers. But some companies and organizations we have spoken to virtualized the entire stack actually to offer even a better benefits of virtualization. And again, virtualization is about grouping of resources at a layer. The layer could be at the server layer, the storage layer, the database layer, the application tier, and what have you. And the real advantage of that is reusing the resources that's available. Example could be server virtualization, which is basically grouping together all of these servers together to really provide a common entity for an environment. Typically, you're running servers that are not really 100% utilized. With server virtualization, you can really utilize all of these servers in a more efficient manner and really have a very good efficient manner for availability, for security, also for administration of the resources. Now, application virtualization is much more higher level, which could really virtualize all of the various components and have the entire application be able to blend itself within the business processes, as well as having it more efficient infrastructure available for that matter. Typically, application virtualization sits on top of the infrastructure virtualization environments like server virtualization and storage virtualization as we know it.
Well, that's a great explanation. Thanks. Rob, can you tell us a little bit, or Jeff, can you tell us a little bit more about Microsoft's virtualization strategy and some of the products that they have to bring to IT pros to utilize these different types of virtualization?
Sure. As was just described, virtualization can mean a variety of different things depending on which technology you're using. And at Microsoft, we really believe that we want to provide customers a wide range of virtualization solutions, not just one, for example, machine virtualization and call it end of the day, end of the story. We want to do much more than that. Certainly, server virtualization has been where most of the excitement and most of the people have been focused on for the last few years, virtualizing their servers that are underutilized, driving up utilization by virtualizing and running multiple concurrent workloads on the same server at the same time. That's certainly one way to look at virtualization. However, there's much more to that. We look at it really at Microsoft from a desktop to the data center point of view. So machine virtualization on server is one. Another is if you look at what we provide, for example, in terms of the desktop. And in terms of desktop virtualization at Microsoft, we take a very broad approach. Some people seem to think it means one thing. For example, does it mean being able to run a virtual machine on a laptop or a desktop? We actually think it means far more than that. For example, it could be running a terminal services session, or it could be providing application virtualization to stream an application down to a laptop, a thin client, a thick client, a rich client, or virtual machine, or a terminal services session. So there's a number of ways to do it there as well.
Just for the sake of IT professionals out there that might be a bit confused by all the different V names that come out of Microsoft, what's the difference between, say, AppV and MedV?
Good question. So AppV is basically what we're doing is we're virtualizing where the application comes into contact with the operating system. So for example, I could, if I wanted to deploy an application onto a thin client or a laptop very quickly, I could assign it to your account. So when you log in, lo and behold, there's a shortcut on your desktop. You double click on it. It streams the application down to your environment. And then if you decide you want to take your laptop down to the local coffee shop, it would continue to run because it's cached locally on your system. And then when you come back into the office later, it synchronizes up. What's nice about that is if, for example, there was an update, the next time you synchronize with the system, it actually would provide you the updates very quickly and easily. MedV is a different type of solution. So MedV, for example, is for our enterprise customers. Let me kind of explain what this means. In Windows 7, we provide a new capability called XP mode. And XP mode is a great way to provide a solution for some legacy applications that, for whatever reason, don't work with Windows 7. For example, maybe the software is no longer available, the manufacturer is no longer around, or they just haven't had the time to update drivers. Mm-hmm. For example, I've got an HP printer, for example, that the drivers weren't ported beyond XP. And I'm able to plug it into XP mode at home and actually share my printer and still use this printer at home. XP mode provides a solution for that. Well, in an enterprise environment, customers have told us they want to provide XP mode, but they also want to provide it with greater a lockdown environment. For example, they might want to deploy XP mode, but not allow their end users to add any applications to it. They want to provide some sort of policy mechanism to be able to say, yes, you can run your applications and they'll run in this compatibility mode, but we want to prevent you from running any other applications. So MedV is a really great way. It's a great way to provide a backwards compatibility solution for our enterprise customers.
Oh, great explanation. Thanks. One of the things that you touched on in that was workloads. Rob, could you talk a little bit about virtualizing SQL Server in a workload? I know SQL Server is it's an I/O intensive workload, and IT pros are sometimes reluctant to virtualize it. Can you talk a little bit about your experiences with that?
Sure. So virtualization, obviously with the database, we're thinking more of a server-style consolidation as opposed to what we would call a strict app-style virtualization. We are, with the current version of processors with second-level address translation and I/O MMUs, we're now seeing that the performance impact when virtualized has essentially gone away. That at this point, we really aren't worrying about the performance aspects of virtualization. So there has been concern around CPU overhead, around I/O overhead, and at this point that is really a lesser issue. So we see strong penetration of virtualization across our customer base, mid-size, large enterprises, consolidation scenarios. We are recommending it as a mechanism using Hyper-V and System Center to construct private clouds to as Noel pointed out early on, is to get more efficient usage of hardware, lowering the cap cost of hardware underutilized, as well as the management advantages of having lots of these loads consolidated onto a single system.
That's great. Scott, what kind of workloads has Avanade virtualized?
Well, as part of our virtualization effort that's going on now, we're kind of at the cusp of seeing that a lot of the 2010 products come in, specifically like SharePoint 2010, as well as OCS, TFS, Team Foundation Server, and we even have recently deployed our CRM enterprise-wide application virtually. Many of our SQL databases that support some of the front-end apps that our users from our client-facing consultants as well as our corporate employees. Many of the databases behind them are also virtualized, specifically like our time entry system, many of our intranet apps that provide information, communications from corporate to our employees.
Well, that's great. What kind of things led you to choose the Microsoft virtualization platform? I assume you're virtualizing on Hyper-V?
Yeah, when we started this effort about a year ago, we were anticipating a technology refresh in our data center, and we were seeing that we had deployed a lot of servers, application to servers in a 1-to-1 ratio, and we, as Jeff was saying earlier, many of those servers were seriously underutilized to the tune of I think we did an audit and we were across the board, we were at about 80% utilized. And if we were to replace these servers with new technology, which is significantly more powerful, we would only see that utilization go down. So that was a concern for us, and it didn't make financial sense to do that, even if we were paying less for a server than we did for the original. So that was a concern of ours. The warranty issue for our existing footprint was a significant cost for us in IT, just because we were approaching we could see ourselves approaching the 200 servers in this one particular data center that we're tackling right now. And we wanted, with the virtualization concept was intriguing to us because we could see ourselves, for one, combining workloads onto these more powerful CPUs or more powerful servers, as well as reducing the power consumption in our data center, the warranties that we would be paying for each server, and then just making better use of our hardware platform in the data center.
Well, that's a great reason. Noel, what reasons have you seen other customers virtualize? What are some of the reasons that you see them take it on? We've heard a little bit about server consolidation and higher resource utilization. Are there other reasons, and do you see this as being a trend amongst other companies?
Well, absolutely. I guess, just to stress on the server consolidation piece of it, we have certainly seen the trend over the last many years where you couldn't really build the application on a single server because it's very expensive to have. If you had 1,000 applications, you could never have 1,000 servers to go with it because it's too expensive to build some of these servers today. And definitely virtualization helps a lot in this category because you can consolidate all of these servers together in a very simplified manner, in a very automated manner to reap some of these benefits. Besides server virtualization, we definitely see a lot of collaboration happening in this environment. Collaboration between the departmentals, where some of these departments who really want to collaborate amongst finance group versus HR group versus manufacturing. Now, all of these groups want to interact with each other, and they definitely want to use some sort of a data environment where they can really collaborate on these platforms. So we've seen virtualization across some of these enterprises based on that platform. But we also have seen where you're looking for testing an application, where testing of an application requires a server. The virtualization really helps you deliver that platform where you don't really have a dedicated server or a dedicated storage to support your environment. So virtualization really can help you a lot because you can create logical units out of these virtualized environments very quickly and deliver it for much value. So we've seen collaboration, we have seen testing of the applications, we have seen definitely using for backups and recovery, for disaster recovery implementations. We've used for many different purposes altogether. And I think the real key value here you bring is the lower the cost of the environment. because as I mentioned, you don't have the luxury of having one application sitting on one server. You want to have a consolidation strategy around this. And also, some organizations, I know they're running thousands of servers, and they don't have the administrators, so many administrators to manage these environments. So virtualization definitely helps a lot in this platform.
I see. One quick follow-up with that. Do you see virtualization as being a technology that applies more to small, medium businesses, large enterprises, or can it apply to all of those?
It actually applies to all of those. What's interesting is we initially started getting inquiries from large enterprises, those who had many storage, many applications. But more recently, we have been getting from SMB, smaller businesses who are really looking at some of the value proposition that virtualization brings. So it definitely has a variation. I guess everyone can benefit, whether small business, medium-sized business, or even large businesses can benefit across that. And the good thing is, if you're a bigger organizations, you can probably reap more benefits actually, because you're dealing with much more hardware and storage and applications, and definitely has a much more attractive value proposition for them. But even smaller organizations, we see we're trying to bring in smaller some of these applications which are very complex in nature. They can now utilize some of this virtualization technology to their advantage.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I can certainly follow what you mean with large organizations because they'll have many more resources to consolidate, so the gains in efficiency would certainly be higher there. Jeff, there has been a lot of improvements with Windows Server 2008 R2 and virtualization. Do you want to tell us a little bit about some of those?
Absolutely. In fact, to kind of continue on really briefly what you were talking about in terms of the benefits of virtualization, there were a couple I want to make sure we also point out. One was the power savings. If you have, for example, 20 servers that you consolidate to one or two, you've theoretically, not just theoretically, but you've significantly dropped your power utilization. Well, if you have, say, 10,000 servers and you've consolidated that down to 1,000 servers, 10 to 1, you've easily, made a significant savings in terms of power. Well, virtualization, first of all, does a great job in improving your power. In R2, in Windows Server 2008 R2, we've actually gone a step further. We've taken advantage, and we're doing very close partnership with a number of our hardware partners. For example, we have things like core parking, which allows us to take virtual machines and actually run them on fewer cores in the system and actually sleep cores. And what's interesting about this is we can do this during the day, even when the server is busy. Not just at nighttime when the server may not be busy. And this is important because when we've talked to enterprise customers, many of them have said to us, listen, our servers run 24/7. And even though we may not be busy in our time zone, maybe we're asleep, there are folks around the planet, around the globe that are trying to access these servers. So they're always busy. So we said, we understand that. And so if we can do further things to improve power consumption and be more efficient, that will be a huge savings to the bottom line. So we want to enable green IT as well as put some green back in your pocket and save some money. Another key capability beyond power savings and consolidation, of course, is better management and, of course, being able to dynamically provision virtual machines. Live migration, for example, is a brand new capability to Server 2008 R2. Allows us to live migrate a VM from server to server without any downtime. And of course, the real benefit to this, the key scenario why people want to do this, is they need to take the virtualization server down for some sort of maintenance. For example, I want to take the server down to add some more memory, add some additional storage, maybe apply a firmware update. Whatever the reason, I can live migrate the VMs from one server to another, take the physical machine offline, do whatever sort of service I need to do, bring it back online, live migrate the virtual machines back without any sort of downtime at all. So that's a huge advantage. And one of the nice things about live migration is it's completely transparent to the guest operating system. The virtual machine has no concept it's being moved. Doesn't matter what the OS it is. It could be Linux. It could be any operating system, Windows. It just happens, and it's completely transparent to the guest. So those are two key capabilities. One last one I've got to mention is some of the work we did around really kind of being prepared for 10 gigabit Ethernet, and where we see customers wanting to apply future investments. one of the things that they told us was, a lot of our customers says, today we're on gigabit Ethernet today, but we very much want to make the move to 10 gigabit Ethernet. We're very excited about that move, and we'll do it when our budgets allow, probably next 18 to 24 months, watching prices and seeing what the purport price is for 10 gigabit Ethernet. But one of the things our customers told us very loudly and clearly is they said, when we do make that move to 10 gigabit Ethernet, we want to make sure that our virtualization platform supports it today, so that we don't need to upgrade our hardware or upgrade our virtualization platform. We do want it to be able to work. And so Hyper-V R2 is ready out of the box to support 10 gigabit Ethernet. And we've made some significant optimizations to Hyper-V, things like virtual machine queues, queue support, that greatly enhance our ability to support and really fully saturate 10 gigabit Ethernet. And if you haven't made the move to 10 gigabit Ethernet, don't worry, R2 includes some enhancements for gigabit Ethernet as well, with jumbo frame support. So this allows us to better utilize network traffic and deliver 6x more packets per payload. So there are some really significant enhancements in Hyper-V R2, and we really recommend that people take a really good look at what it has to offer.
Yeah, I can see that. There's been a lot of good changes with that. Scott, what operating system is Avanade using? And you mentioned a little bit about server consolidation. What kind of savings do you think you've gotten? What kind of a degree of consolidation do you think Avanade has achieved using virtualization?
Yeah, lots of questions there. So let me just start by saying, our target has been Server 2008 R2, which is what Jeff was just mentioning it. And I'm going to just add some real-life examples to the savings Jeff was also mentioning. What we have seen in the data center we are currently virtualizing is specifically on that power, is we're seeing an 80% decrease in the amount of power. And it goes along with that example Jeff was saying, that in our case, let's take a round number, like we had 100 servers in this data center that were targeted for virtualization. And these were older servers, not as efficient, not as green as what you're seeing now, the much more, the newer servers that are much more efficient. And we've moved those 20 servers to, in this case, we've moved up to 20 virtual servers, which provides us plenty of room to grow, but it also, that's where we've seen the 20% decrease in power consumption. And that power consumption should stay fairly static as we scale out, because the servers are already deployed and using that power. And if you think of the data center setting, along with that, we've suddenly decreased our footprint in the data center from 100 servers to just 20. And again, allowing plenty of room to grow for the next couple of years. So again, there's another savings there. You were asking also about, was it performance or consolidation? Which was it, Mike?
Well, it was the degree of consolidation that you achieved, and I think that you answered it pretty well by saying that you went from 100 servers down to 20. That's a pretty impressive change. Are you getting better?
It's impressive, but also because there's room to grow in that 20. Because with our physical hosts currently have, I believe there's 64 gigs of RAM on each of those, and we anticipated that to be our footprint for the next 2 years.
Well, that's great. Rob, with SQL Server 2008 R2 coming up, are there any changes that Windows IT pros should know about with the new version of SQL Server? Are there changes that allow it to take better advantage of virtualization?
Largely what's changed is the all-encompassing support statement, and that we fully support Hyper-V across the product lines. And a lot of that really is a test statement. When we went through our testing across the breadth of the solution, and frankly, we assumed that there would be issues. We assumed that there'd be problems that we'd have to address. I'm hard-pressed to think of a single issue we found. As a matter of fact, I don't think there was a single bug that we reported to the Hyper-V guys. So,
music to my ears.
So this echoes what Jeff had mentioned earlier, and that there really is a full isolation and really everything runs without modification, including the host OS and including the application within the host OS. So we were actually rather surprised by how smoothly that went.
If there's something I could add to that really briefly, this is a great topic where I get asked about quite a bit in terms of heavily I/O intensive applications, and Hyper-V and databases is one that's is asked very regularly. Is it safe to virtualize databases or things with heavy I/O? And it's great to hear that the SQL team has basically said, we've done our testing and it simply works. And we've actually known this for quite a while. We spent a lot of time with Hyper-V optimizing performance.
Noel, what other kinds of workloads have you seen customers virtualize besides, well, we've seen that databases are possible. What about email or SharePoint? Do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, we are definitely seeing having emails and content being virtualized as well. Because, as you know, there's a lot of wealth of information typically organizations have, and the collaboration is definitely becoming a very important focus where you want to make sure the collaboration is more effective.
That's great. Scott, what do you guys do to manage it? Management was one of the topics that we briefly touched on. What does Avanade do to manage the virtual environment that they have out there?
Well, again, in our architecture, our platform that we have, we're talking about 20 servers that are hosting all our VMs. We have initially deployed Virtual Machine Manager or System Center Virtual Machine Manager, or VMM, to just keep a handle on it, as well as perform some of our physical to virtual conversions as well. We also have done some virtual to virtual conversions from older technologies such as Vmware or Virtual Server 2005.
Jeff, Scott mentioned a little bit about System Center Virtual Machine Manager. What are some of the other members of the System Center family, and how do they apply to managing a virtual and physical environment?
Yeah, System Center is our management suite for managing not only virtual machines, but physical machines, terminal services, sessions, and it does a full life cycle management. And one of the things that our customers have always told us is, don't give us one set of management tools to manage physical and another set of tools to manage virtual. It means then we'd have to train our staff on two sets of products, and that's not something they want to do. So in our System Center suite, we offer things like Configuration Manager. Configuration Manager can do things like bare metal deployments. It can do patch management, again, for physical and virtual environments. Virtual Machine Manager can create virtual machines, deploy virtual machines. I can do live migration, as well as it also has capabilities like Performance, Resource, and Optimization. And what that does is it actually integrates with our Operations Manager to do things like to be able to move virtual machines in the case of, hey, it notices that load has gotten a little too high on one server. It can actually move a VM and actually run through its intelligent placement wizard. And then, of course, we have Operations Manager, System Center Operations Manager, which is our health and monitoring tool. And it's not only manages Windows, but applications as well as roles built into Windows, and as well as interoperability in terms of managing even things like Linux environments as well.
That's great. Jeff, here's another tougher question. We talked a little bit about systems management and managing virtual and physical infrastructure. One of the other virtualization platforms that's out there now is, of course, VMware. How would you compare and contrast Microsoft's management solution for virtualization with VMware's?
One of the biggest differences is again, we provide a holistic solution for both physical and virtual. And again, it goes back to one of the core customer requirements, which is please provide us one set of solutions that does them all. If we have to have one for physical and another for virtual, that means it's going to increase my training costs. Another capability is we actually do heterogeneous support. So our Virtual Machine Manager will manage Hyper-V, it even manages our older virtual server, and also manages VMware ESX from a single console. So it actually provides customers with a heterogeneous environment.
That's great. Rob, have you seen any benefits in virtualizing SQL Server under Hyper-V? Do you see this giving organizations the ability to lower, say, their TCO or other things like that?
Very much so. And I touched on this sort of diagonally. I think actually we've all touched on it diagonally. There's Several. I might start with more of the micro, less obvious, and then get to the macro, more obvious. And that an example that we see, and I'm sure this is not uncommon, for building test infrastructures, and Noel talked about this, it is just a thing of beauty being able to have a test environment that you can get to a given point, take a snapshot, and then continue on. You now are able to jump back to a very particular point in time. And that's a capability that really, it's hard to see how you could do that any other way. And so it ends up just being huge in our test infrastructure. I mean, frankly, as we're doing maintenance and servicing on SQL Server, as we have bugs coming during the process, being able to repro things by deploying a image and reproing to a snapshot in time is just, it's crazy. It's a capability that just literally, there is no other way to do it. And before, you would have had to go through very meticulous step-by-step reproductions. Not to mention the fact that this actually is happening typically on a developer's desktop. So instead of having to provision systems in the lab, go sit down in the lab, get things running, get things installed, he can have a repro image. We have an automated system that repros an image right to his desktop that he can step through it. So it's capabilities that really weren't even available before.
Well, this sounds like a lot of big changes. Just to catch up on part of our other conversation about management, do you think, and this is an open question for everybody, do you think virtualization and System Center are freeing up IT to be able to enable them to deal with bigger business issues rather than being mired into just the details of managing their infrastructure?
Oh, definitely. Let me just jump in here real quickly. Our Microsoft IT is a perfect example of that, and I've talked with many.
And I totally agree with that, as well. We have seen customers tell us as well where they're deploying in these virtualized environments, and they can provision these virtualized machines so quickly. In fact, in minutes actually, compared to days, which they were doing previously. So provisioning of these resources definitely has become a lot quicker than what it was maybe many years ago, actually. So this is definitely a big jump from where we are seeing. It's made IT more efficient than ever before.
Well, certainly there are benefits out there, but does the IT professional really have to virtualize everything?
Do they have to? No, I would never tell a customer that they have to do anything. We want to do what makes business sense for them. However, we do think that the Microsoft value proposition for virtualization speaks for itself and can allow them to reduce their power costs, reduce their costs of ownership, allow them to do more with their hardware, even in a small and medium environment where you maybe only have 1 or 2 servers. Imagine if you had 1 or 2 servers, but guess what? You actually clustered the 2, so you got high availability, so you could improve your availability. You're able to reduce your power because of the enhancements we have in virtualization, things like core parking. And in fact, you could do more with the hardware that you have by being able to run more workloads because of the fact that you're running in a virtualized environment and they are isolated. So do I think that they have to? No, but I think the benefits are pretty tremendous, and I would certainly encourage people to take a look at those.
Oh, that's great. Well, we're about to run out of time, and as we're coming to a close, I'd like to thank everybody for all the time that they've spent today and all the great input you've given IT professionals out there that are watching this. As we come to a close, I'd like to just go around to everybody and ask them to wrap up. I know we've covered a lot of different topics, and but for each of you, is there anything that you think that we've left that we haven't covered?
I want to mention a case study that was recently done with between Microsoft and Avanade, and it kind of outlines and describes some of the details with respect to how we deployed, what we've deployed, and some of the costs that we've seen realized as a result of our virtualization effort. And that case study is available in this booth here.
Also, there are a lot of great resources around virtualizing SQL Server, and pointers can be found in this material in the Microsoft Virtual Online booth.
So there are webcasts available for virtualizing SQL, SharePoint, and Exchange. Make sure you take a look at them. They're available in the Microsoft Virtual booth.
Great. We've covered a lot of virtualization topics today, and I think we've shown how virtualization can clearly enhance the IT efficiency that organizations face out there. And with that, I thank everybody for watching, and I guess we're going to wrap up.